Hi, I'm Mike Love, known as Mike Love of the Beach Boys, and you're tuned into RockCellarTV.
RockCellarTV, 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 RockCellarTV.
Growing up, what were the go-to records for you? The records that were in that permanent rotation on that 45 stack?
I would have to say, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, all the early rock and roll guys. Everly Brothers was an amazing influence on us because of their blend and their neat songs, really great songs. And of course, then, we became aware of the Four Freshmen and their amazing vocal harmonies, which they called them modern harmonies back in the 40s and 50s. But we became, really fascinated, obsessed perhaps about learning a few of the arrangements, which we did, and we still do one to this day. But the doo-wop stuff that was on the R&B stations back in L.A. In the 50s was an enormous influence on us. Loved it. I like to sing the bass parts. My cousin Brian would sing the high parts. We'd get my sister or my Aunt Audrey or my cousin Carl, who was, very young at the time, but we'd get together just to create those harmonies. So it was always about harmonies for us. But straight ahead rock and roll was good too, But of course, we sang as family together at Christmas gatherings, at birthday parties, at Thanksgiving, any special occasion. In fact, my mom would invent reasons to have a party. She was way into music. She sang light opera in high school, and she was a very talented dancer, singer, and everything. But she had 6 kids, I being the oldest, so she didn't pursue her own career, but she was very capable of it. And she was really good friends with Audrey Wilson, who's married to her brother Murray, father of Brian, Dennis, and Carl, my first cousins. And she would say things like Audrey was the most talented, musically talented person she'd ever met. She had a great ear. And I think Brian Wilson and Carl, and Dennis, they got a lot, not only from their father's side, the Wilsons, but from their mother's side. So it was all about early rock and roll, doo-wop, combined with the Everlys and Four Freshmen.
When did you first realize you could sing harmony, that you actually could sing and you had a good voice, but were able to lock into harmonies? Because a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah, there are a lot of great groups with a great lead singer and a fantastic band, and many of them have done enormously well. But the thing that has always distinguished the Beach Boys, I think, and was our ability to harmonize, but not only sing the note, but blend. It's kind of like sublimating your individual sound in favor of creating a really fantastic blend. And we've always, we got a little bit of that from the Everly Brothers, and we got a little bit of that from the Four Freshmen. But it's the way we sound when we sing together is what gave us that distinctive, or distinguished us from many other groups who are great groups, and even some that do harmonies, but not everybody can do that 4-part close harmony like the Four Freshmen did. And my cousin Brian once did an arrangement of the Lord's Prayer, which when we played it for the Wrecking Crew guys, and Bill Medley was there, and he remembers it. And it's a mind-blowing arrangement. It's just fantastic. It's beautiful, and it's the Lord's Prayer. So, it was just an amazing thing. The bass part I sang on it moved around, like Chuck Berry said, like a wayward summer breeze. It was all over the place. It was, so that was just, I think, it was the most incredible arrangement that Cousin Brian ever did.
But when did you know that you could sing harmony?
When?
When did you first realize that, I can lock into it?
Well,
Was it early on?
with Christmas parties or birthday parties, and back in the well, let's see. I remember Brian Wilson singing. The first time I have a memory of him singing was sitting on my grandmother Wilson's lap, singing Danny Boy, and his voice is just celestial. It's amazing. But then once that part of it was over, we'd get together and we'd sing, we'd harmonize together, just the two of us. And if we could find a third, we would, and a fourth. But sometimes we would go to Angeles Mesa Presbyterian Church, Wednesday night youth night in the Baldwin Hills area of LA. And my sister Maureen, who was 2 years younger than I, Brian's 1 year younger than I, we would walk home together singing Everly Brothers in 3 parts, or some of the doo-wop stuff. And so it was ever since childhood is we sang harmony together. So, you know, and we always loved it.
You come from a very tight family. You know, looking back on your parents, was there any advice that they gave you or that stuck with you through the years, things that they told you that you still hold dear to yourself?
Well, my mom was the one that was into music. My dad was just a hardworking guy. He didn't know anything about the music business. He provided for a wife and 6 children. I remember him going to work in the morning and like leaving the house at 6 a.m. and sometimes working 7 days a week if they had to get a job out. So I think I got the work ethic from my dad. There's no doubt about that. Was a big impression on me. But the music came from my mom's side, and the fact that they grew up in Dust Bowl conditions. They left Kansas when my mom was 5 years old. She and some of her siblings came out to California on the train, and they were so poor that they camped on the beach. They didn't have money for a house or anything like that, and so it was, you know, it was like they talk about the Okies coming to California. Well, it was Dust Bowl conditions. This is even before the crash of 1929 or something. So, you know, but what they had was music. What they had was the love of music and the love of, you know, my uncles sang together, my mom sang in a trio and all that. So it was the love of music that kept everybody, you know, sane and provided pleasure and entertainment, because they didn't have any money to speak of. And on my father's side, my grandfather had the good sense to emigrate from northern rural Louisiana to California and started working in what they call sheet metal work and did kitchen equipment. So that was hard work, but he provided well for his family, my dad and his brother and sister. So, you know, there's between the work ethic and the music and the love of music. Even my dad, who wasn't particularly a musician or anything, he had a couple of songs he would sing. He practiced the cello because my mom wanted him to play something, and so yeah. So it was just it's never lost on me that we came from very humble beginnings. My parents, but through hard work, they really succeeded in life and really built a great foundation for our success.
What were the favorite records of yours that you participated on with the Beach Boys? What were your parents' favorite records of yours?
I think
with the Beach Boys?
My sister Maureen played the harp in my room and Catch a Wave. And I have 2 sisters that play the harp. In fact, in my home that I grew up in, we had a Steinway grand piano, a Hammond organ, and a Lyon and Healy harp right in the living room, overlooking the city of LA. It's a beautiful home. And it was just, music was just an obsession, I guess you could call it, for my mom. She would play opera music. She didn't like rock and roll so much. We would have a hi-fi stereo system, and she would turn up Maria Callas, Renata Tebaldi, Enrico Caruso to as loud as it would go. But if we turned our rock and roll past, 5 or 6, halfway up, and she would rebel. She didn't like that. Anyway, she did, however, love the harmonies, all the beautiful harmonies that in my room and the warmth of the sun. She was very proud that my sister Maureen played on a couple of our records, and it gave it a beautiful harp. Was an incredible addition to our stuff. But my sister Maureen and Brian and I used to sing together, coming home from that Wednesday night youth night. So there's so many wonderful contributions by everybody in the group.
Yeah. How about your father? What was his favorite Beach Boys song?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if he had a favorite Beach Boys song, but he had a favorite Beach Boys concert. We went to the Anaheim Stadium. It was sold out, and my mom and dad didn't go to all of our concerts, but they went to that one, and they were stoked, as we would say.
Is that the one where you wear that gold glitter jacket?
It may have been.
You had some pretty interesting.
Yeah, I also had a Miley, gold-plated Miley lei that I got in Hawaii that Jeff Foskett used to call it the golden seaweed.
What was the turban about, by the way? That was.
Hey, I beg your pardon. I'm a
turban.
multicultural guy,
That was an interesting look.
Yeah, well, I've done all the looks. I've had the beard that was pre-Duck Dynasty and more like ZZ Top, and so yeah. In fact, I remember seeing that beard. Then we did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I was watching the show at my home in Manhattan Beach, and I saw how that looked on TV. It was like this red beard. It was like this long, and I went up on a what do you call it, on a commercial break, and just cut it right, not off, but trimmed it significantly. So because you just let it grow and grow and grow, and pretty soon you're looking like Duck Dynasty or ZZ Top. Nothing wrong with ZZ Top. I really like Billy Gibbons and his playing. Okay, and don't mean to be disparaging in any way.
Let's talk about Unleash the Love. It's been a while since you released solo music, and in terms of the message and the positivity of the record and what you're getting across, it really seems to fit in with the the socio-political and cultural climate of today. Talk about the record and the backstory.
Well, the backstory is I've always loved the environment, and I've always loved philosophy. I was the most well-read kid in my grade school, junior high, and high school. And although I got what's called a 98 on the Iowa test, which is pretty high, I graduated closer to the bottom of the class than I did the top because I was hanging out with the brothers on the track team. And so, but nonetheless, I was really not good at math, not good at science, but I really loved lyrics, literature, language, social studies, history, you name it. I remember in the 8th grade, I did a buddy report where you do something with another person, my friend Craig Owens, who we ran track with and cross country during high school. But in junior high, we did a report on Adolf Hitler, and I read Mein Kampf, The Rise and Fall, all that stuff, and got a AA on it. So, but I was always fascinated in the spiritual side and the philosophical side and the religious side of things, but I also felt that none of those religions seemed to be lived up to. The tenets of their beliefs seemed to be lived up to by the population, the people. And how many wars have been conducted in the name of religion, which is a farce and crazy. The Christians would go to the Middle East and have, cut people up, and the Muslims would fight back, and it was just a bloodbath. It was just insane. And it's still like that. It's still like that. And so in the song Make Love Not War, I say, make love not war, what in the world's all the fighting for? Give peace a chance, the earth could use an evolutionary advance. So whether it's the environment or humanity nature was always a huge thing to me. In my book, Good Vibrations of My Life as a Beach Boy, I talk about chasing butterflies with my friend Tom Emmel, who has 2 PhDs and became a lepidopterist, meaning the study of butterflies, lepidoptery, and is a professor with tenure at University of Florida. And so I used to chase butterflies with that guy. And he went on to Stanford and I went on tour. So I still have the love of nature. In fact, I took the whole family to my children, wife and kids. We went to see where the monarch butterflies congregate in the winter in the mountains of Mexico, in the mountains of Michoacan. And you look at the trees and they're not green, they're copper colored because there's so many millions of, well, hundreds of thousands, let's say, of monarchs clinging there. And these insects are unbelievable. They fly back across, they winter there and then they fly back across the Gulf of Mexico and they go to various places, whether it be east or west, and they breed and they have a second generation, then flies even further, and then they come back. So it's like the butterflies that come back to the exact same trees aren't the same butterfly that left. They're the descendants of them. So it's incredible, the cellular memory on a little brain that big. Oh my gosh, it's a miracle. It's fantastic. They land on the water in the Gulf of Mexico and just to hydrate and rest for a while, and then they take off. So, I mean, how is that done? So nature's been always a huge fascination to me, and I deplore the desecration of the planet, therefore, and I think that Mother Nature has all the time in the world, and humans don't. The humans are messing with the environment, and Mother Nature could end it all with a couple of volcanic eruptions and put everybody on ice, literally. So I think it's, you know, some of these songs perhaps might, you know, ring a bell with, in the sense of, you know, we only have one Earth. There's a song called Only One Earth. It's time for sharing, a time for caring for what it's worth. There's only one Earth, and our survival depends on the Earth. So we have to get, I'm not anti-progress and anti-science or anything, but what I do say is, if science has got us into it, let's get us out of it, you know. And so I promote positive, you know, I mean, when I say I promote in my music, I think about, when I meditate, and I have meditated a lot since December of 1967 for, 50 years now, and this month, 50 years. And, you know, I've done a lot of thinking about myself, the world, you know, and the environment, the people in it, the value of meditation that potentially could help change the world from chaos and misery and suffering and to positivity and progress and, you know, things like really good health and happiness. Those are good values, and it's all achievable, but it's just you have to contact the source within you and become more energetic and clear and selective in your actions. There's so many actions in the world that are really negative and which maybe you become a little more sensitive to it if you meditate, you know.
What must be joyful for you with this record is 4 of your children, it's like a family affair, are a part of this record, which really is a continuation of how things happen with your family.
It is. I'm glad you caught that. That is so true. It's a family tradition who is yet another incarnation of family singing together. My daughter Haley has a mystical voice. My son Christian has got a fantastic voice. And my daughter Amba sang the lead on the song I wrote with Brian Wilson in 1960, what is it, 3? Is that when President Kennedy was assassinated? November 23rd, was it? 22nd, 1963. Well, we woke in the morning after writing this song to the news that President Kennedy had been taken to the hospital in Dallas. So we knew what that was all about. So in January 1, is when I believe we recorded the song, and it was charged with a lot of emotion. But to see my daughter, Amba, who will be 22 in just a few days, to listen to her sing it, and with us harmonizing and backing her up, it's pretty incredible. And she once asked me several years ago, she might have been 15, 16 years old, she said, "Hey, Dad," "Yeah, Amba." Amba's her name. "Yes, Amba. Did you write the words to The Warmth of the Sun?" I said, "Yeah, I did." She said, "Dad, you're a genius." So to hear that from your teenage daughter, that you don't hear that a lot, from teenage daughters.
You hear other things
Yeah,
that aren't so
you hear plenty of stuff, believe me, but that was very sweet. And and her brother Brian he sang with us on a couple songs on the album, Only One Earth, but also he played an important part in the song All the Love in Paris, because I asked him, "Hey, because he's fluent in French," I said, "Brian, how do you say, in French, how do you say all the love?" He says, "Tout l'amour." I said, "How do you say all the love in Paris?" "Tout l'amour à Paris." Okay, that's great. Let's do it. So the opening chorus, which I came up with the concept for the chorus, my friend Paul Farzo, who produced the song originally, he came up with the really nice melody of the verse, and he wrote one of the verses. I wrote another verse, so it was true collaboration. And more recently, when we reproduced it, Michael Lloyd we asked Dave Cause if he'd come in, and he blew a fantastic solo. I mean, the guy's a well-known player and is a really neat person, but I texted him and told him that, "Dave, you really blew my mind. I love your solo on that." I mean, and he just honked a little bit at the end of it. He says almost a little tip of the cap or the reed or something to a bit of rock and roll there on the way out. So I think that it's such a fantastic romantic song. So I love doing that. And the chorus, it's my son Christian, my son Brian, myself, Paul Farzo, originally Randell Kirsch, who played bass and sang high with us for many years. But then Jeff Foskett came in and did some stuff too. So it was an amazing evolution of that record.
You first met the Beatles in '65. You went backstage. Some of the Beach Boys went backstage to meet them. Is that where you first forged that affinity with George, or did that come later in India?
Well, more so in India, but when we met them in Portland, we talked about cars and girls. And it was funny because Lennon's voice was out, and when we come to this certain part of the song, everybody shake their heads, they all scream, and they won't hear anything. It was pretty funny. But Carl Wilson loved the English cars, and so did I. I had a. Oh wow. Oh wow, what did I do?
I caught your shoe there.
Oh, son of a gun. Rookie move.
Okay, sorry. You can
We'll come back. So you were saying Carl Wilson.
Carl Wilson had an Aston Martin DB5, back in the day. I had a 48 MG, 39 Rolls, and two Jaguars, an XKE and a sedan. And they were all yellow, except the Rolls Royce was a little brown and something. Anyway, so we loved. I've always been an Anglophile when it comes to cars. I mean, I love other cars too, but we talked about cars and girls and touring and stuff like that. That was originally. But when we were taught meditation by Maharishi in December of '67, mind you, this is the year after Good Vibrations went to #1 in Great Britain. And so between Pet Sounds and Sgt. Pepper, there was a bit of, positive rivalry, And when I was invited to go to India, I'd never been. I said, well, I'd only been meditating for 3 weeks maybe when Maharishi invited me. And he said, oh, bring the other guys. He said, well, I don't know if they'll come, but I'll be there. And when I got there, all the Beatles were there, and Mia Farrow and Donovan, And Donovan just is still very much involved in meditation. George loved his meditation, loved Maharishi, but he also was a devotee of the Hare Krishna people, which gave rise to the song My Sweet Lord. And so when I recorded Pisces Brothers, I wanted the girls' sound, because in the chorus of My Sweet Lord, there were the girls going Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. I wanted that sound, so I asked my daughter Haley to come and sing on it, and she has this fantastic voice. And she was there at the Grammy Museum when we sang together. And so I was, I just love her voice on there, and it's a tribute to George Harrison and his beliefs and what was important to him. And I even talked about a couple of his songs. Some say his guitar gently weeps, or, Little Darling, Here Comes the Sun. So, it was just a reflection about George as a person and the soul he is and the great guy he was.
Did you have deeper conversations with him in India, do you recall?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I did. He and John Lennon was amazingly insightful and asked these incredible questions of Maharishi. And you could see his intellect was on 24 hours a day. It's like he really wanted to know what was going on.
Well, George and John stayed the longest.
Yeah.
I think Ringo went back because the food was too spicy.
But his wife was pregnant with Zach,
There you go. So that's another reason. But how long did you stay?
About a month and a half, I'd say. And Maharishi told me, you should stay and become a teacher. And because it was a teacher training program, I didn't even know this. I was so new to meditation when he invited me, hey, I'm coming. But I didn't know it was a teacher training course. It was to train people to become teachers of TM, because Maharishi wanted to teach enough people to where it could make a difference in the world. So he couldn't do it by himself. So he structured these teacher training courses. Thousands of people have done it over the years. But that time was one of the earlier courses. And when I had no idea what it was when I got there, but I became aware of it once I was there. And I carried the notepad and I made the notes, and we meditated for hours a day. At that point in time, dear Prudence Farrow, she was amazing. Maharishi would say, how many meditated for an hour? How many for 2 hours? How many for 4 hours? How many for 6 hours? And the most I ever meditated was probably 8 hours. I didn't keep a track of it, but it was all day and all night long. I mean, it's like, at that point in time, people were encouraged to meditate as much as it was comfortable. Prudence didn't come out for like 3 days. She was meditating. I mean, she's serious about her meditation. In fact, she's one of the more active TM teachers in the world. She lives in the panhandle of Florida, and she's a great lady. She has a degree in Sanskrit, a PhD in Sanskrit from the University of California at Berkeley. I mean, she's really smart and really intensely into teaching meditation and all of that.
Now, you were there for your birthday, and you had some special troubadours, right?
Oh man, that was a mind-blowing
tell us
thing.
about that.
Yeah, well, George's birthday and my birthday, his was February 25th, mine's March 15th. Therefore, we're Pisces, and therefore Pisces brothers. It was fascinating because for my birthday, not only did George give me a painting of Maharishi's teacher, who's called Gurudev. His name is Swami Brahmananda Saraswati, and but they call him Gurudev for short. And I have a painting in my home that was given to me by George on my birthday, and all the guys that were remaining there, like Harrison and Lennon and McCartney and I think Donovan was involved in the chicanery too. They were playing a song called Spiritual Regeneration Movement Foundation. And at the end of it, they said, we want to thank you, Michael, happy birthday, Michael Love, happy birthday, Michael Love. You can hear John Lennon there really clearly, and it was fantastic. It was like a archetypical Beach Boy, it was like fun in a spiritual way. So that was an amazing thing. They gave me that tape for my birthday.
Oh, they gave you the tape.
Yeah, and there was an Italian film crew that filmed it. So there is footage that exists somewhere in the world.
Well, I hope I'm pronouncing this name right. One of the songs on the record. It's a really interesting song, and it's one George would have liked, which is it Ram Raj?
Ram Raj. See, Rama was, there's Krishna 5,000 years ago. Rama was 20,000 years ago. And so it is fascinating because it's as a result of going to this temple in southern India, in the state of Tamil Nadu. There's a temple there that has literally a gold dome. It's thousands of years old. These columns holding up this building and quarried stone with a language other than Sanskrit on it. I mean, the language in that area is Tamil, but there's a language that predates Sanskrit and Tamil called, I believe it's called Ganda or Gandakshara. And so I make reference to this because this place is so mystical. And what it is they built this temple where Lord Rama, to the Hindus, Rama is a god. He's an incarnation of the Vishnu. And so there's a triumvirate. There's Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the maintainer, and Shiva, the destroyer. So there's these three principles active in nature, but in Hinduism, it's all spiritual. So many names of gods and goddesses, and I mean, the wind is Vayu, space is, I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing philosophy, amazing religion, and it comes from the Vedas. And the Vedas is just the truth and truth of existence, and there's several different Vedas. Well, to make a long story short, this temple is mind-blowing. It's huge, enormous, and it's been around. I asked a priest, just how long has this temple been here? He says, no one knows for sure, but at least 10,000 years old. He said, Lord Rama worshipped here during the Treta Yuga 20,000 years ago. So it's just, what was going on 20,000 years ago? What, saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths? Well, there was a lot of gnarly stuff going on in India at that time too. And so there's a book called the Ramayana that tells some of the tales of what was going on there. So it's just such a fascinating experience to go there and witness and be witness in the inner sanctum this idol of a god known as Lord Narayana, who apparently gave birth to the Creator through the navel. I mean, it's not stuff that Judaism, Christianity would be too, understanding of. However, it's a tradition that goes back thousands and thousands of years, and my fascination with philosophy and religion was really titillated by being there, because I mean, they don't have electric lights. They show you the deity with lamps of ghee. Ghee is clarified butter, and it burns, and they show you in candlelight or ghee lamps. So in the sacred lamps of ghee, it seems that I don't know, the words of the Ram Raj are pretty mystical and have to do with a whole other civilization that's been going on for many, many, many millennia.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song.
Thank you.
Production is really, really good on that song.
Thank
as well.
you.
Yeah. Brian's Back is a song that's been around for quite a while.
Quite a while.
I think in the early 70s you wrote the song, or
Well,
mid-70s?
yeah, they had a campaign called Brian's Back with when we were with Warner Brothers, and around that time, see, Brian's had his ups and downs mentally and emotionally and all that. So I wrote that back then. It was an ode to the time when we were very young and had loved music. We would sit in his, it talks about it in the song, it would sit in his Nash Rambler, the seats would fold back, and we'd turn on the radio and we'd listen to, all this music from you know, mainly R&B and early rock and roll. And my dad would have to go to work so early, he'd kick us out of the house because we were making too much noise listening to music. So, you know, it goes back to those times. We'd go to football games together, and, you know, we went to, I remember one time we were allowed to invite a friend to go with us to a senior trip to Catalina Island, and I brought Brian. So it was like that. We shared a lot of experiences together, and so I wrote that Brian's back from that perspective, you know. I mean, we wrote Good Vibrations, all these great things together, you know. So a lot of people, I've read, some stuff has been read to me about blogs. They don't understand why I'm, you know, doing a song called Brian's Back or putting on the album because I fired Brian from the 50th anniversary tour or something. And it's just stupidity is what it is. And people have their computers and they get obsessed, but I didn't fire Brian from anything. So, and I always gonna love Brian for what we did together, and everything is never, with human beings, is never perfect. And when drugs enter the picture, then, you know, who knows what can happen.
You talked about earlier your love of language and poetry,
Mm-hmm.
and you can really hear that in the cadences, and obviously Chuck Berry was a big influence, but
True.
the books you would read too. But can you pinpoint a few Beach Boy lyrics that might be lesser known that you're really proud of the lyric and how it's expressed and what it evokes?
Well, now that depends on what you're talking about evoking. It's hard to say. It's such a broad question. Do you have any song in mind, or?
I think Add Some Music is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I love something like Airplane too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Airplane as well.
Well, there's so many. How many songs have we done? 300 or 400? Yeah, I don't know. You know, I like All This Is That a lot, and you know, I think one of the better songs that Brian ever recorded that he wrote himself was Till I Die. It's an amazing song. I mean, it really is being in touch with, you know, your mortality, your humanity, you know, the vulnerability of life. It really says it.
As a spectator, what's the greatest rock and roll show you've ever seen? As a spectator,
Not
not you performing, but a show that you saw.
one of the best, I'd have to say, was James Brown and the Famous Flames at the old Madison Square Garden in New York, when it was made out of wood. Like they used to have the Boston Garden out of wood in the Madison Square Garden. It's before they built the concrete and rebar monstrosities that exist nowadays. But I and maybe, you know, maybe half a dozen other white people went to see this show, and it blew my mind. He was so great. It was when he was doing the splits and the cape, and there was just what an entertainer. The Godfather of soul. Oh yeah, he was.
Well, you spoke about your love of environment, and this year marks the 40th anniversary of Dennis Wilson's Pacific Ocean Blue, and you wrote the title track for that.
Yes, I wrote the words. He asked me to do the words for it.
Yeah. What was the reaction among the Beach Boy community and the members themselves? Were you surprised that Dennis was able to create such a beautiful, affecting record?
Not really. He was very deep in his, you know, unfortunately his lifestyle choices took him in a detrimental direction. But no, he was as deep as anybody. In fact, the funny story is, you know, we talk about learning meditation. They're doing 10,000 years ago right now.
Cool.
Yeah. We met Maharishi in December of '67 during UNICEF Children's Emergency Fund show, and that was great. And then we went the next day to London, and Dennis called. He stayed back in Paris. He says, "You got to come back to Paris." I said, "Why? I like London." He said, because Maharishi going to teach us to meditate. I said, are you sure? He says, I'll find out. And he called back again about an hour later, said, yeah, it's set for tomorrow afternoon, you know, which this was a Saturday. And so we got up early the next morning and flew back to Paris. It was kind of funny because we got into a taxi cab from the airport and the guy said, have you ever been to Paris before? And we said, yeah. When? Yesterday. But Dennis made that call to have us come and learn meditating. So we all learned together. Even when he was drinking, he'd say, Mike, let's get together and meditate. So
I understand you went, even near the end of his life, you helped him, you went down.
well, we tried, yeah. But he would go into rehab for like a night and then leave. So, you know.
The title track of the record is really interesting because on the surface, if people don't listen to what the lyrics are, they think, you know, you're celebrating the joys of being in the ocean and things like that, but it's Pacific Ocean Blue.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about the dual meaning of that song. It's very interesting.
Well, the Pacific Ocean Blue is sad that there's so much, you know, inhumanity. Well, you know, towards the environment, towards, you know, like they trap dolphins and slaughter them by the hundreds of thousands and stuff. It's messed up. So, you know, and also just the ocean is imperiled just by human waste, and like there are areas where there's underground canyons full of plastics and stuff like that. And it's not good for the animals that live there. So, you know, it's a sad situation. It's got to be rectified.
And that was on your mind even back then, which is
Oh,
why you
yeah.
wrote the song.
Absolutely. It's always been on my mind.
Well, you've had so many high moments with the Beach Boys and so many moments that probably bring you great joy thinking about it. But if you could go back hypothetically for one day, we could put you in that time machine and you could relive one of those moments and carry that with you again. What would you want to relive?
With the Beach Boys?
Yeah, what would you want to relive? If you could relive a really high moment for a day, you could be back in there and you could carry that with you.
There are many great moments. I mean, you'd have to distinguish between,
Let's pick the 60s.
well,
Let's pick the 60s, yeah.
well, I think listening back to the words that I wrote on the way to the studio, that I handed to Brian, who handed them to Carl, and sang the words that I'd written just moments before on the way to the studio for Good Vibrations was pretty special. Hearing Good Vibrations back for the first time with Carl singing the lead. I came up with the chorus and all the lyrics and stuff, and Brian did the brilliant track. That was pretty special. But when it went to #1 in England, we were voted the #1 group in England, and #2 the Beatles. That was special too. So, but you know, so many concerts are on a level that's unbelievable, because our music creates so much happiness and joy and positivity in people's lives. You know, there's all kinds of stuff you could talk about that the yellow journalism, they call it. People focus on the idiosyncrasies or the missteps of a person, or invent things even that don't exist. And that's too bad, because they're missing the point of the whole process of making music, which is to create harmony and positivity and show some love. At the core of all our music is love, because that's how it started. It wasn't for money or fame or anything like that. It was all about getting together and harmonizing, blending, and sublimating your personal sound in favor of creating a group sound. And so, anyway, so there have been many, many great things. July 4th, Washington, D.C., in afternoon in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Inquirer said 900,000 people were in the streets of Philadelphia, and the economic impact was $22 million to the city. And that was back in the 80s, when $22 million might have meant something.
I was at that show, and it was a very one-off show, because not only was Jimmy Page on stage, but Mr. T was on stage as
In
well.
Philly?
I was at that show.
I remember Mr. T going to Philly, the train was hot and he kicked the window out. Yeah. Yeah. Jimmy Page, though, that was like a Martian landed on our stage. That was amazing, wasn't it? He was just, that was unbelievable. What an incredible guitar player that
And
guy
you did
is.
2 shows in it. You did the
Yeah, afternoon in
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, evening in D.C. So we played for over 1.5 million people in one day, which is pretty awesome.
Well, The Who are one of the biggest rock bands of all time. And ironically, The Who's drummer, Keith Moon, was the #1 Beach Boy fan.
He was.
Said he would have left.
He wrote us a letter saying he wanted to be our drummer. But we had Dennis Wilson. So what are you going to do? He's the brother.
What are
And
your
a
memories
cousin.
of hanging out with him? And he jammed with you
I
guys?
didn't hang out with him so much, but Bruce did. When he went to England, Keith Moon hooked him up with John and Paul to play the Pet Sounds acetate that Bruce brought with him, and that got their ear, and they got busy to do another album.
How do you think fame, success, and ego affected each member in the band, and how were you able to stay grounded?
Well, it affects everybody differently because everybody's got a different personality, different experiences. I think my Uncle Murray was very brutal emotionally. I mean, he was brutal in other ways too, physically. Just a brutal person. He was not a happy guy. And he took it out on his sons, Brian, Dennis, and Carl. And they each have their individual personalities and reacted differently. So in my case, my father was a very hardworking, kind of stoic guy, devoted to his family and provided great. And my mom was, she was more the artistic type, but he provided the stability, whereas my mom provided the emotional and musical part of things. So although we experienced similar things, it was different according to different personalities and stuff. So I don't know, I think I always appreciated what my father brought to the situation, which was the stability and hard work. And so, that combined with the fact that I ran cross country in high school, it may not make any difference to anybody, but cross country and track was pretty interesting because I would run 5 miles in the morning before I even went to school, and then I'd work out in the afternoon. So I'm not afraid of hard work, and people will say, Mike, you did 175 shows this year. That's really hard. I said, no. We have a great crew. It sets up for us and everything. What I do is not hard. What my parents and grandparents did, that was hard. So I appreciate, that kind of hard work and dedication. And we have a miraculous thing going on with our music because it creates so much happiness, not only for ourselves subjectively, but objectively. I mean, not everybody likes the Beach Boys, but several million do. So it's a good thing all over the world, We start a song in Japan, they go, ah, they hear doon, 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 doon. They hear California Girls opening up, they yell, And then in Germany, they stomp to help me, Rhonda. So it's really fun, and people get really happy about it. So, and we can be a little melancholy in Warmth of the Sun or In My Room or Till I Die, something like that. But we can also get very extremely happy with fun. I Get Around and Surfing USA and that kind of thing. So I never lose sight of how much positivity and happiness our music has given to so many people. I wear a bangle that was given to me by an infantryman in the Central Highlands of Vietnam. He was given this. He got this bangle from a tribe who was allies with the U.S. because our music meant so much to those guys who were in harm's way doing what they had to do. And so there's just so many things going on in the positive sense that, to me, it far outweighs the negative things. So you can get trapped into or obsess on or whatever. Well, I don't do that.
What's the source of your ambition? Because you've always been a very ambitious person. What's the source of that, your ambition?
The source of my ambition for doing music and staying healthy and meditating and stuff is that I want to be a force for good and a force for evolution. You know, if I can be a proponent of something, Maharishi used to call it exponent of reality. If one can create a better reality on the planet, I think it's a worthwhile objective.
You know, the Beach Boys' career has been filled with heroes and villains.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the lesser-known heroes that were part of the band's history that you would want to commend?
Lesser-known heroes. Well, a very well-known hero that's only spent a little time with us was Glen Campbell. He played on several of our records, several of the songs on Pet Sounds album. I think he played on I Get Around and a couple other doozies. And he was just the most gifted person ever. And it's just a horrible, sad thing that he succumbed to Alzheimer's. And, you know, that was really sad. But he was brilliant, and he helped us in a time when my cousin Brian didn't want to tour anymore. You know, he didn't want to be on stage, and he felt insecure out there. And plus, he had a strong feeling that he could be in the studio working on things, and it worked out pretty well because he left in '64. Glenn came in for a while. Bruce came along and joined when Glenn went off to be Glen Campbell, that everybody knows, and I don't know, David Marks was with us for the first 2 or 3 years and played hundreds of shows with us to get us established. He's not so well known in terms of being one of the Beach Boys, but he was absolutely there from the beginning because Alan Jardine quit the group after her first song, Surfin', and did not, it wasn't around for Surfin' Safari and Surfin' USA and like that. He came back, though, when he heard Little Deuce Scoop. Yeah.
The Sunflower album is one of the lesser successful, a less successful album, but perhaps one of the greatest records in terms of artistic achievements in the Beach Boys' history. And it was one where Brian wasn't as involved as much. It was one where the group really kind of took over,
Yeah.
you know, certainly Carl and you and Al and
true.
Dennis quite a bit as well in that
That's
record.
true.
What are your memories of that period? Because it wasn't a great period commercially for the band, but it was in terms of what you guys were able to do creatively.
Yeah, well, the thing is that there's highs and lows in the recording industry. At the end of our Capitol Records contract, which is in the late '60s, we had Do It Again, which was #1 in England. I got Brian out of bed and literally took him to the beach, and we came back and sat down in his, I recall it being in the piano at his studio in his home there and in Bel Air. And we wrote that song in just a few minutes, and it did very well, particularly in England. But in the U.S., we were at the end of our contract, and I just don't think that that Capitol Records promoted us very well at that time. In fact, just a couple of years before that, they were just calling us the #1 surfing group in the USA when there were things like the Vietnam War percolating and student unrest and civil rights and all this kind of stuff was going on. So, but at the same time, we did Good Vibrations, which is as avant-garde as one can be, I think. It was a fantastic, song, I believe, and it was our psychedelic tome for the times.
But Sunflower was a record where Brian wasn't as involved, and you guys all stepped to the table creatively.
Well, yes, because Brian became somewhat reclusive and retired, literally from being as active as he once was in the studio. And so there was that time period when it got more democratic, I guess. Bruce would come up with a great song, or Carl would come up with some really good stuff.
Dennis wrote some of his best stuff for that record as well.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a combination of, if you have like a quarterback, it was Joe Namath, and he can hit anybody 70 yards away, something like that. But his knees are out, and he's benched. You know, he can't do it anymore. Well, Brian, you know, he shelved the Smile album, and of course I got blamed for it naturally, because somebody needs to have a villain, and that's me. But anyway, he shelved the Pet Sounds album because of various things that have been written about, and he kind of wasn't the dynamic producer that he once was, and so that left it to all of us to, you know, to get involved. But we came back a little while later and did the Wild Honey album, which I think was pretty neat, because that was, let's do something more R&B influence. And I wrote the lyrics to the song Wild Honey from the perspective of what a young Stevie Wonder might have said to his mom. Yeah, it was pretty neat.
And you did a Stevie Wonder song on the record too.
Carl sang the hell out of I Was Made to Love Her.
Two more questions.
Yes.
The Beach Boys, I think at one point were offered to play Monterey Pop Festival.
Yeah, we were.
And it was something that didn't happen. Why didn't you guys do it? And do you think, had you guys performed there, that perhaps would have worked in the band's favor?
I think it would have been a lot better for the band, because there are a lot of people came out of that event.
Why did you turn it down? Why did
I didn't turn it down, but Carl was being pursued by the government for draft evasion when he became a conscientious objector, but he was drafted, and he wasn't about to go to Vietnam, and so we did a lot of community service things because of Carl's status as a conscientious objector. And then there was drugs that were playing a part in some of the decisions. As a group, we just weren't ready for it.
Do you regret not playing that festival?
No, I don't regret anything.
Yeah.
You know, I regret not being knowledgeable enough to know what to do when the incursion of drugs came into play, or alcohol. You know, these are things that took a toll on family members. You know, people that you love and are close to, and like any other family that's affected by those things. You know, we were affected by those things at the time, and so I regret that. But I don't waste a lot of time regretting that we didn't do a concert somewhere or something like that.
Well, my last question is, there's a Beach Boys song that I always thought should have been a much bigger hit, and I know you like this one too, and you occasionally perform it, but I've never seen the Beach Boys perform it, and wanted to see if you could talk about the backstory. It's Okay.
It's Okay. I love that song. I wrote it with my cousin Brian. It came out on our 15 Big Ones album, and it was an early summer recording. It was meant to be released in the early summer. Fun is in, it's no sin, it's that time again to shed your load, hit the road on the run again, summer skies in our eyes and a warmer sun. It's one for all for one, all for all, out fun. You know, so I think it's a great message, great lyric. It's all about, okay, the dreary gloom is over, and man, let's go. Let's have fun outdoors, you know. And so that was, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay to get out there and have some fun by yourself, maybe, or else with a special one. Good or bad, glad or sad, it's all going to pass away. So let's all play and enjoy while it lasts.
You did that without cue cards. That's impressive.
Well, I have it in my head.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Mike,
you.
for doing this. It's been
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you, Kenneth. All right.
Rock Cellar TV. 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 Rock Cellar TV.